Campaign 2018 is sponsored by Wisconsin Hospital Association, Wisconsin Counties Association, Wisconsin Realtors Association, Marshfield Clinic Health System, and Campaign 2018 partner Milwaukee Journal-Sentinel.
WisconsinEye coverage of the 2018 elections continues. Our candidate interview today is Cynthia Kaump of Madison, Democratic candidate for the state treasurer. Cynthia, welcome to WisconsinEye.
Well, thank you. Thanks for having me.
Well, I caught your speech at the state convention, so a little bit, but first of all, a little bit about yourself. So you worked for the state treasurer for how long and did what?
I did. For 3.5 years, I was the director of communications and community outreach. So I am very proud to say we set state and national records of excellence in with a number of our programs, including unclaimed property, probably the one people know most about. Mm-hmm. And part of that was returning record amounts of money to the people of Wisconsin through that program. So it was extraordinary.
Well, I'm really curious, why did the governor and lawmakers take EdVest and take unclaimed property away from the state treasurer's office? Because I looked it up. It now has an annual budget of $113,500, and there's one FTE, which you want to be that one FTE. So give us your vision for the state treasurer.
Sure. My vision is to restore this office to what the people of Wisconsin deserve it to be. You know, we only have 6 statewide constitutional offices through which people's voices can be heard and through which services can be rendered on a constitutional and statewide level. So this office serves 6 million people, or the nearly 6 million people of Wisconsin. My vision is to restore this office to what it should be and what our forefathers intended, and that is to be the person who oversees the banking and investments of this state.
You had a very unique perspective working for the office of the state treasurer. Why do you think the governor and lawmakers made policy decisions to take these functions, important programs, away from the office?
You know, my comments will not take aim at one particular governor or administration.
I understand.
You know,
because the office was eviscerated over decades, probably both governors. Excuse me
Correct.
for interrupting.
Yep. So over the course of several administrations, there have been attempts to chip away the services and programs of this office and move them elsewhere. We live in a capitalist society, Steve, right? Whoever holds the purse holds the power. So the state treasurer's office is incredibly powerful by just sheerly the nature of its constitutional obligations and responsibilities.
As you said, 106 constitutional
Absolutely.
offices.
So if you control the money, you control the power. So, you know, I think that is pretty common. We see that in our society. We see that in government. My concern is, regardless of who's governor, this is a dangerous concentration of power. We need to have 6 statewide offices which represent the people of Wisconsin and oversee specific target areas for which they are qualified. And that is why I think we need to see a restoration in this office. And I do, as you said, I have the institutional knowledge. I have the relationships in the legislature, not only having served in media for 20 years around the state and for 2 major networks, but also having worked in this office and dealing in the wake of every diminished budget. I took on all of the legislative director duties as well. So I was in these offices. I know which way these people zig and which way they zag. I know who's opposed to this, who's for this, what their positions are, what they want to see, what types of numbers they need to understand to make decisions. I did speak to several legislators before I made this decision to run on both sides of the aisle. Mm-hmm. And every single one of them said, "Why aren't you running?" And I said, "I'm not a politician." Well, I guess I am now. You know, it's time to show up. I have the knowledge and the relationships, and I have the financial experience. So, I mean, we really need to restore this office so that it can serve the purpose it was intended to serve.
Do you need a Democratic governor and Democratic blocks in both the Assembly and Senate to restore some of these powers?
No,
you don't.
No.
Okay, what's your pitch if the next governor is a Republican and if the GOP continues to control the ledge?
The pitch is simply this. The people have spoken. we had a constitutional amendment ballot, a constitutional amendment question on the ballot April 3rd. The people who voted overwhelmingly rejected this idea of eliminating this office. The people want a financial guardian. People in Wisconsin are fairly traditional in their values. We all know this, you know this. You've been covering politics here and people for a long time. When you mess with the word Constitution, that suddenly becomes very uncomfortable. The only advantage that serves, which is a distinct and prominent advantage, is this puts this office on the map in the public eye of opinion, which we haven't seen in a very long time. This is an opportunity to educate more about this office, what it should be doing, what it can be doing, what its current constitutional and statutory duties require, which are currently not being performed.
Would you have the power as state treasurer to have access to some of this financial data to provide the oversight function that you say that you say is critical to the office?
Absolutely. The legislature has its own body for financial reporting, but the state treasurer is supposed to be the body for the people for that financial reporting. This isn't taking aim at anyone or sticking it to anyone. This is simply saying we need to have a system of single line reporting, financial reporting through one office. We need transparency in government. People should be able to go to one place very easily and access the status of our financial situation in the state of Wisconsin. Right now, that's not happening. And it can happen, and it should happen, and I will work diligently and diplomatically with everyone and anyone to make that happen.
I've been to that office now. It's in the basement of the Capitol. It is one person, so when the treasurer is not in, the door is locked. Wouldn't that, how could you get fired up about being a one-person agency with a vision that doesn't have the statutory programs and powers that it used to?
It actually has more than 100 statutory duties still on the books. They're just certainly, at this point, not being exercised or executed with this current state treasurer. But that doesn't mean there isn't work for this person to do. There's a lot of work for this person to do. Obviously, first 90 days, the focus is on budget. We're looking at the next biennial budget. We need to talk to everyone on both sides of the aisle and hope that we can get a budget restored for this office, which is appropriate for the services this office should provide. How do I get fired up about it? Easy. When I was in that office, I saw the difference this office can make. I met face to face with the people attached to very important stories and benefited from the services and the aggressive outreach and the simply caring, having heart. Again, this is an opportunity for us to restore faith in government through these programs, many of which were unconstitutionally moved elsewhere. So the legislature has indicated it supports moving those programs back. So that can happen legislatively or it can happen other ways.
You're right. If you're elected, one of your first jobs would be to prepare a biennial 2019-20
Yes.
through 2021 budget. How many FTEs would you ask for and how much money? Because right now the agency is one FTE, $113,500 a year.
Sure. I wouldn't ask for any new positions.
Just you.
I wouldn't ask for any new positions. What I would ask for is to transfer back the programs which were unconstitutionally moved elsewhere and are underperforming. Let's all comply with the laws. That's what I would ask first.
Which is the most important program?
Unclaimed property.
Unclaimed property.
Unclaimed property is
Which
probably
went to the State
DOR.
Department of Revenue.
Yep, Department of Revenue.
Is the Revenue Department not handling that program well?
Well, you're aware of the audits the Department of Revenue has every couple of years, and you know what their performance is overall.
But we also see these press releases every year. The DOR has returned X amount under the unclaimed property.
2012 through 2015, when I was in that office, the unclaimed property program was transferred to the Department of Revenue not quite halfway through 2014. So in 2.5 years, when I was in this office, I personally had a hand in returning more than $100 million to the people of Wisconsin. The Department of Revenue cannot boast those numbers. Our current treasurer boasted in a recent op-ed leading up to the April 3rd amendment and election that he had returned $20 million. I don't know if those numbers are accurate because the Department of Revenue is not transparent in releasing those numbers.
I'm really curious. The state treasurer still has 100 functions
More than
under state law?
statutory. And constitutional duties are the same as an attorney general. So it doesn't make, here's the thing, Steve, when an office is targeted, and you know this as a journalist, instead of buying into the hype of it's valueless, it doesn't mean anything, it doesn't do anything, ask deeper questions, right? That's what we've learned to do. The bottom line is this office held so much value. Someone else repeatedly over time wanted that value under their watch. That's what this is about. Would it be a battle? Maybe. But all I have right now is people's word. And, I was born and raised in Wisconsin. I surround myself by highly ethical and truthful people. I was responsible and paid, and my job was contingent upon telling the truth for more than 20 years as a journalist to the people of Wisconsin and the nation. This is about trusting someone's word, some people's word, and hoping they honor it. If they don't, there are other courses we can take.
The shorthand definition of the state treasurer in the Capitol is it has one function, and that is to serve on the Board of Commissioners of Public Lands. Mm-hmm. So would you do anything different in terms of that duty, serving on the Commission of Public Lands?
Sure. That is the hype that has been presented by the people trying to eliminate this office. It is true. The state treasurer sits on the Board of Commissioner of Public Lands and is, by the Constitution, handed the task of transferring funds between unclaimed property to BCPL, the Board of Commissioner of Public Lands, overseeing the investments through the low-interest loans they dole out to financially troubled municipalities, and those 4 funds which directly benefit public education throughout the state of Wisconsin. There's also a timber factor here, right? There's timber management associated with BCPL.
A sizable amount.
A significant amount of timber management in the state of Wisconsin. There is also the consistent conversation of buying and selling properties or public lands. I don't subscribe to selling additional public lands, by the way. The way that program and that fund of money for those investments was set up was established, as you know, by selling a certain amount of acreage 100 years ago, more than 100 years ago, to set up that fund.
The Commission is one of the oldest state
That's right.
agencies.
It is. And it needs to be protected. This office can help protect that and continue to oversee the investments. But this person in this role has to be someone who is actually qualified to understand that language and investments, to know what is a valuable investment, what is a worthy investment, what is too high of a risk. We have some incredibly high risk investments here in the state of Wisconsin, and our debt obligations were very high risk obligations. I'm not comfortable with.
So you're not satisfied with the way the Commission has been making decisions, and you'd change some of its priorities?
I wouldn't say that. I think BCPL does a great job, and it has historically, for decades, more than decades. It's done a great job. But that is not the only focus of this office. This office, cash management, which is essentially the accounts payable system for the state of Wisconsin, requires the state treasurer's signature on every single check, every state-issued check. That program was moved out in 2004. That's a conversation that needs to be had. I don't know how you can keep a pulse on the checks and balances of a state checkbook if you are not directly overseeing those programs. So I would never diminish the role and the responsibility associated with BCPL. It's more than a $1.2 billion responsibility in terms of overseeing those investments. There are things we can do there. There's more we can do there. But this really does start with unclaimed property, because a significant portion of the funds for BCPL to exist and invest come from unclaimed property. Yeah. The state treasurer has to transfer that money. So if those investments on the front end are not high and yielding as much revenue as they can in the terms of interest, then there is less interest transferred to the Board of Commissioner of Public Lands, trickling down to all of the programs which are managed under that board. Additionally, you can only hold back a certain amount of revenue, which this office is operated off of revenue. Not one taxpayer dollar, despite what those trying to eliminate this office have said, goes to support this office. It is solely supported by revenue generated by the Unclaimed Property Fund.
Okay.
And so you hold back that money, and then you also transfer a significant amount of that if you're investing more into the general fund. So potentially offsetting the tax obligation for the people of Wisconsin if managed properly.
Okay.
And that's just one program.
Final question, we're
Yeah.
almost out of time. Differences between you and your opponents in the August 14th primary?
You know, I've never compared myself to anyone else in a job interview, and I won't do it now. What I can say is I was born and raised here. I've been trusted for decades by people of Wisconsin and all over the United States to tell the truth and uncover injustices both in government and in the community. So there's a high level of trust already established there. I was trusted in this office to oversee the most important programs and promote them to record-setting levels. Additionally, I own 2 businesses based here in Wisconsin. I pay taxes on those businesses here in Wisconsin. I work with a financial firm, and I'm licensed as an insurance intermediary, and I will be fully licensed. I'll have all my securities licenses by the time I would take office. Those are my qualifications, and I have the passion. My heart is in this. This isn't a stepping stone for me. I had no intention of being a politician. I'm doing this because it's the right thing.
Okay, thank you.
So, thank you.
Cynthia Kaump of Madison is a Democratic candidate for the office of State Treasurer. The primary is August 14th. Thanks for visiting
Thanks
WisconsinEye.
for having me.
Thank you.